I'm Council Vice Chair Wingate Newton. I'm here with Councilmember Jeff Danner, and we're at the Coastal City Summit here in the Hilton Hotel. And why do you think this is important, Mr. Danner?
This is going to be a good summit. It'll give us opportunity to talk to experts in the fields of transportation, tourism, protecting our environment, and the hazards that come with living out in a coastal city.
We have a lot of, as you notice with St. Petersburg, we're surrounded by water, so we are a coastal city. We are happy that everybody chose to come to our beautiful city to have this summit, and hopefully we can learn a lot of best practices to apply right here in our own community. What are some of the things you hope to learn from this?
Well, again, from some of the experts we've got here that have their knowledge in ecotourism, the marine sciences, what other communities have done with their transportation plans for the area. So we're going to learn a lot from them, and I think they're going to learn a few things from what it's like to be in St. Petersburg.
It's a great opportunity to do some idea sharing, some sharing of best practices, and hopefully it'll be better for everybody involved.
I want to welcome everybody to this great city and to this great summit. We're going to have a couple, 3 days of great discussions on how we can solve problems together. The whole point of this discussion is to try to bring people that are in the policy-making business or politicians with scientists and the industry to see how we solve some of the major problems that we have in coastal communities. So let me introduce Mayor Bill Foster. Mayor Foster was elected mayor of St. Petersburg in 2009, and he's been involved with the city in many capacities. He worked for the city council for over 10 years, and so he's been very involved with the city. So since he's been here, he's made St. Petersburg really a #1 arts destination for the country, and this is highlighted in American Style magazine. And I think that Mayor Foster will explain his philosophy, but he has something that he calls the 7 S's. And this seamlessness, safety, sustainability, service, small business, schools, and sports, arts, and culture. So, Mayor, please join me.
Well, good morning. I will not bore you with the 7 S's. That's not something that you'll be interested in today, but thank you all for coming to the city of St. Petersburg. Thank the hosts and those that worked tirelessly to put this on. And we're certainly glad that you're here in the Sunshine City, not only as indicated by this beautiful weather that we've had since you've been here, but we were given that title many, many years ago by a newspaper who I think we're still rated in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most consecutive days of sunshine. So we're glad you're here. Is there anybody here from Kansas City or Des Moines? Okay. And the reason I ask that, the city of St. Petersburg, we're known for a lot of things, but, you know, the city of Memphis, known for the blues and probably some of the best barbecue, and you can argue whether or not they are, or Pittsburgh, known for steel, and so there's a lot of cities known for a lot of things. The city of St. Petersburg, and what we share in common with probably everybody in this room, is that our #1 industry, the #1 attraction to this county surrounded by water on 3 sides, this peninsula inhabiting 1 million people, is tourism. And I think the only reason they're here, now if anyone is here from Clearwater, and I see somebody from Clearwater, unless you're here to see Winter the dolphin, the thing that attracts you to the city of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County are the beaches. We are known for having some of the best beaches in America, and we have this beautiful thing called Tampa Bay, and yes, we have the Tampa Bay Rays, and that's certainly a sense of pride, but Tampa Bay is this gorgeous body of water right over here. And being a coastal community, we know the impacts that man-made structures can have on managing a coastal community. We understand that while this thing was created, not manufactured, but created, we know the impacts of natural disasters, acts of God, and we understand the impacts of the acts of man. And so today's summit, we're going to brainstorm. We as a county need to pick your brain. And some of you will need to pick our brains because we have one of the finest, well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say we have the finest College of Marine Sciences anywhere in the country, with Dean Dixon here representing the University of South Florida College of Marine Science. And we have some other scholars and people from academia in here, so it's a good opportunity to find out just what we are doing to manage some of the challenges on being a coastal community, and we'll pick your brains as well. But it's going to be, I think, an informative summit. When it comes to acts of man, we saw the immediate impacts of the BP disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. And we understand that there are desires for this fossil fuel that will probably drive this continued desire to drill in the Gulf of Mexico. And we saw these millions and millions of gallons just flowing of this crude oil into the Gulf. And then we saw man come in with a dispersal agent, and we don't even know what the impact on the fisheries will have on and this impact on our coastlines of this dispersant. But now we have this layer of crud that's sitting on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico that an act of God now, a hurricane, can stir up. And so we have all of these unknowns. We know the immediate impacts. We saw our tourism numbers go into be blasted down. We understand that the impacts on the Gulf seafood industry are still being felt, but we still don't know what this crud on the bottom of the Gulf floor is going to do if it's stirred up again. So we're trying to understand these things. We have a beautiful coastline, but every time we have a big storm, we have one stretch that consistently gets washed out. So we spend millions of dollars every few years to re-nourish, and then we put out these T-groins to see if we can preserve some of the beach, but we don't really understand what impact it has on other things and tidal flows. So we're trying to implement best practices, but we're not always sure if we know what the best practice is, and that's why you're here. Because together, I think we can share these ideas and work on a best practice. City of St. Petersburg, I believe, was the first city in the state of Florida to ban nitrogen-rich fertilizers during certain months, because we understand what TMDLs, we understand what nitrogen does when it runs off into the bays and into the intercoastal areas. And so we really like a high degree of water quality, because we think that sells in tourism when people can actually see some of the marine life and see the floor of the bays. So we're working on all of these things, but we understand that this is a very precious, a very sensitive resource, and management is so key to keeping our #1 industry thriving. So we certainly appreciate your attendance here today. Tourism being the #1 industry, I would be remiss if I didn't say, enjoy all of the fineries of this beautiful waterfront. You're going to be in here, you're going to be studying, you're going to be talking, but when you have a break, when you go out this evening, you can catch a baseball game. I think the Rays are still playing the Seattle Mariners. Or stroll along the waterfront, because right over my shoulder you have the largest collection, private collection of Dali artworks anywhere in the country, probably in the world, in the Dali Museum. And then you can stroll up past the Mahaffey Theater, still on the waterfront. You have this beautiful municipal marina with the boats. You go up to the Museum of Fine Arts. You have this wall of beautiful restaurants and cafes and all of these little shops, and then you get to the Chihuly art collection. And then you can go over and have a cappuccino with the Vinoy. But enjoy St. Petersburg while you're here. Enjoy the waterfront and know that we are committed to being good stewards of this beautiful natural resource. And we know that you are committed to being good stewards, which is why you are here. And thank you, Dean Dixon, and certainly Rick and my staff and those who helped to put this on, because it is important. Part of you, I think I recognize some of you in here, we have something called an ocean team, because Pinellas County and right around this area, this waterfront area, we have one of the largest clusters of marine sciences anywhere in the southeastern United States, with Fish and Wildlife and NOAA and the College of Marine Sciences, and we're all clustered right here. So about every quarter we get together and we brainstorm and we talk and we find out what it is we need to do to continue to be good stewards. So take advantage of the expertise in this room. Enjoy our waterfront. Enjoy this coastal community. See if you can take a best practice back to your community, and by all means leave your best practice here so we can implement these as well. God bless you and thank you.
Good morning and welcome. And I just want to give you a brief little overview of the College of Marine Science. So this is just some of the institutions that are part of the ocean team that the mayor was just mentioning. And so within a very small area, you can see the peninsula there. That's where we are right now. Let's see, the Hilton is up here. And so this little peninsula is where the College of Marine Science is located, along with Florida Fish and Wildlife. And then just across is Stanford Research International, and they grew out of our Center for Ocean Technology. They specialize in port security and sort of military applications of ocean sensing. Here's the airport, and the Dali Museum is now just on the waterfront. Let's see, around the corner up there. So we have NOAA, the National Marine Fisheries, Florida Fish and Wildlife, IOI. Thank you very much all for being here. The FIO is the Florida Institute of Oceanography, and that we have a statewide consortium of 26 marine-related organizations, including our state universities, and private businesses, all that do marine research. The U.S. Geological Survey, Ocean Conservancy, the Pier Aquarium, which is just about to get a new home on Johns Pass. And altogether, these and even more organizations account for 1,600 employees, all that do marine science. And it accounts for $143 million in payroll. So this is, this is what blue jobs can do to a community. I've only been here for a little over a year, so we're joking. I'm no longer the new dean. I'm now a well-broken-in dean. But what attracted me about this region was the real collaboration between the city, the businesses, the business community, and the academia. And I've been to a lot of oceanographic institutions, and I've never seen the degree of collaboration and just real support that the city of St. Petersburg offers. And that is, thank you to the mayor for being here to greet you all. We have city commissioners. Where's Wenge? Wenge is here. We have people that work in public works for this city. So this is an amazing community that is really trying to bring together all of the assets from academia, business, federal, state organizations. So that's the unfortunate place where I have to go to work every day. So here is my office is right up there, and I have to look out on Bayboro Harbor every day, and it's very sad, but someone has to do it. We have 30 faculty. We have about 100 graduate students, masters and PhD, bring in about $12 million in federal research funding every year. So we don't have an undergraduate program. We are a graduate only. institution, and our degrees are in marine science, focusing on the basic academic areas of biological, geological, chemical, physical oceanography, and we have a new marine resource assessment program focusing on fisheries. We do a lot of outreach, and I think part of one of the best practices we need to work on is how do we communicate to the public things that need to change, things that they need to be aware of. And one of our favorite outreach programs is the Oceanography Camp for Girls, where we take about 30 middle school girls and take them out on the boat, and they do sampling, and it really puts the spark of the love of the environment and the love of science into these girls. Many of them now have graduated from the middle school Camp for Girls. They're now graduate students in our program. They're starting an alumna association, and the community has been a big supporter of this program, including Progress Energy, and Vinnie Dolan will be the next to speak, who's been very supportive of this program. So again, that pulling together of the community to support the best science and the best outreach. Our community has been very supportive of, again, education in STEM. So we have a lot of named fellowships to support graduate students. And most of these fellowships were developed by the former dean, Peter Betzer, who is in the audience today as well. So at CMS, we have scientists working in every ocean, and we're working from the Arctic to the Antarctic. We're working around the world studying global problems because it is one ocean. But of course, we have a larger footprint in local issues. And if you are a manager of a coastal city or you're a scientist doing coastal oceanography, there are a lot of interrelated problems and processes that have to be studied. And so at the Marine Scientists, we have folks that specialize in all of these little bullet points. So, harmful algal blooms, the sustainability of coral reefs. What are the factors leading to the degradation of the coral reefs? The estuaries as the nursery habitats for our fisheries. What is the impact of nutrients? What is the impact of pollutants on our coastal system? What's causing, how do we fix these dead zones of the oxygen minimums related to the outflow, in our case, in the northern Gulf of Mexico from the outflow of the Mississippi River? The physical oceanography, oil, gas, so balancing our need for resources with protecting the environment. And obviously storms, hurricanes, climate change, sea level rise. So all of these things, if you are living on the coast, are issues that you need to be aware of and planning for. And we sort of got a little bit of visibility from our response to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that we've just passed the 2-year anniversary. And as the mayor was bringing up, we are still continuing to study the long-term impacts. It is true that the oil in the water is now gone, but the oil in the sediments and the seafloor are not gone. And there are new mapping efforts showing complete dead zones of these deep coral systems, again, that provide nursery habitats for certain types of fish. So the damage on the seafloor remains, and we have scientists studying. There's been reports of diseased fish. So we have scientists going out and doing surveys, studying the incidence of diseased fish, including lots of things that I probably shouldn't mention right after you've had breakfast, but lesions and fin rot and sick dolphins. And so how do we understand and systematically study the long-term impacts? University of South Florida is one of 8 institutions that's a lead institution for a center funded through the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. So we got an $11 million proposal for 3 years to study the long-term impacts of the spill. So I'm going to quote one of my favorite faculty members, Bob Weisberg, and his famous line is, "You cannot manage what you don't understand." And so this is the rallying cry of the academics. If you want to be able to measure change, You're going to enact a policy. You're going to put up, how is that beach going to change? How are the nutrients levels changing? What's happening to the viruses in our coastal environment? What's happening to the water clarity? How does changing climate impact the changing physical oceanographic boundary conditions for your community? So you cannot manage what you don't understand. And so this process has to include tight collaboration with the academics that are doing the basic research so that you can understand what needs to change and are your actions and policies that you're implementing, resulting in the change that you want to see. So for this meeting, we will be talking about how do we ensure that the resources are available to monitor and model the change that we're seeing or that we'd like to see. How do we enable collaboration, break down the silos between the federal agencies, the international agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, NGOs, academics, and even individual academic departments within colleges, which luckily we don't have. How do we best inform policymakers with sound science so that they can make the best decisions possible? How do we get the word out to the community that what we're doing is important and that their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their children and grandchildren depend on the decisions we make today? So we've got a great lineup for today, and the keynote speaker will be Stuart Rogel, and we've got some wonderful big names to inform you this morning and in the afternoon. And thank you and welcome and enjoy the meeting.
We've watched this state grow, from a state that was known mostly for mosquitoes to, after the invention of air conditioning, has really grown and developed over the last 4 or 5 decades, and we've been there for that growth. And obviously, air conditioners are powered by electricity, and we're going to do our best to keep those air conditioners running as we approach another hot summer season. We are a state that has the most expansive coastline anywhere in the continental United States. And you think about that, with that coastline comes various responsibilities for this state. You think about environmental, and you think about security as a couple of those. Those are a couple of things that are normally thought of and overseen by agencies in the area of prevention. Trying to think of things that we're going to do to protect that coastline from either an environmental or a security standpoint. In our business, when we think about the coastline, especially this time of year, the thing we think about the most are hurricanes. And you think about the threat, the natural threat, those are things that we can't necessarily prevent, but it's certainly something that as a company like ours that we prepare for. And it's something that we literally do year-round. We're in the time of year, just actually last week, we had our annual drill to prepare for that. And when we have a threat, we want to make sure we're able to be responsive to that threat when it comes to our state. So we literally are planning for that year-round. We're working on our system, make sure that we're strengthening it in areas where we can help prevent damage, make sure our equipment is ready to go for the summer season. And, when the hurricanes come, it's not just an issue for us, it's really a statewide issue. It's not one for the local county here in Pinellas or the city of St. Pete. It's really one where collaboration and coming together across the board with all of the different agencies and all of the different local governments and the state government to make sure that we're dealing with those hurricanes. We saw this happen. It was 20 years ago this year that we saw Andrew strike South Florida, really the first major hurricane that we had in the state for quite some time. And the damage was devastating. And I think looking back on that now, if you go to South Florida, you can see that it's mostly put back together and it's vibrant and thriving again in that part of the state. Our challenge here in this part of the state was the summer of '04, where we had back to back to back to back hurricanes, literally over a 6 to 8 week period. It was nonstop from one storm to another, and I will tell you that we successfully achieved that restoration, and the areas that were affected are in large part, back together and thriving again. And it's just a demonstration that when we have those challenges here in the state of Florida, we come together, all the folks that have that responsibility, we plan for that, we do the restoration, and we move on and get things back where they need to be. It was talked about already, you know, another area was the oil spill, the tragic oil spill that we saw with the Deepwater Horizon. And a lot of that was more the effect here with the local communities was a bit public perception. You know, the oil wasn't necessarily here, but the local communities and the beach communities, it really wasn't until the last year or two where things are starting to return to normal. One of the encouraging things, I've talked a lot to the folks that are out along the beaches, which is another place to get out and visit, the beautiful Gulf beaches that we have, you know, just a few miles to our west here, really had a very encouraging and strong early spring season here in the state of Florida. Seems like the tourists are coming back, and that's something that we really enjoy, and that's a vital part of our economy in this part of the state. So we know there will be more challenges in the future. You know, we are proud as Progress Energy to be here in St. Petersburg to partner with our local communities. We understand that our success is very closely aligned with the success of the cities that we serve and the businesses that we serve and the communities where we live and work as a company. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. I hope you have a great meeting and a good conversation as we continue to work on the things that are going to be important for the future success of our coastal communities. We're proud to be a sponsor. Thank you for allowing us to be here, and I will turn it back over to Frank. All right, thank you.
We have a wonderful program planned for you, and we really want to encourage you to use this opportunity to ask questions. This is really about our conversation together. I encourage you to, if you've come in and you're staying in the hotel, you must go outside. It's absolutely beautiful, and you must take a deep breath and really appreciate the lovely water and weather that we have here. I do want to now introduce Stuart Rogel. As I mentioned, I support businesses. I have been actually working in industry for 20 years, working with scientists and government through many collaborative awareness developing programs regarding issues that are particularly difficult to get your arms around, and how we come together as an organization, as regions, as national, as countries is really important on how we approach these things. And so I'm delighted to be able to introduce Stuart Rogel, who is the president and CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership, and that is the regional organization that works with partners to market the 8-county Tampa Bay region nationally and internationally. It conducts research, regional research, and coordinates the efforts to influence business and government issues that impact economic development. Of which many of the things we're discussing here all relate and tie into, from our tourism to our transportation to the planning for risks, as well as the latter session on Thursday, where we really look at the economics of smart growth and calculating the value of our public spaces and what those mean to our cities and regions. The partnership is currently spearheading the regional business plan for Tampa Bay, which is a major community-wide initiative to create jobs and greater economic diversification for the region. So please join me in welcoming Stuart Rogel.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's always my pleasure to speak to about Tampa Bay and the Tampa Bay Partnership and what we're doing with our region and trying to grow our community's prosperity and economic development and jobs. One thing I learned early on is when you get up and speak to someone, oftentimes you have to remember that you know more than the audience, so what the information you're sharing to them is new and is informative and educative. But I've got to tell you, it's quite intimidating to be able to talk in front of this audience, where I'm certain you know more than I could even imagine or forget to imagine or forget. So it's going to be quite interesting. And as the mayor said, I and the team in the Tampa Bay Partnership who are going to be joining you throughout the next couple days look forward to learning from you, because if, as you'll see in a moment, if One thing that we have here in St. Petersburg and throughout the Tampa Bay region is coastline and coastal communities. And so we are addressing, we are talking about, we are working on, we hopefully are taking advantage of for jobs and economic development and quality of life, the attributes and the assets of coastal communities. But we also face, as Vinnie Dolan shared with you, some of the challenges of living on the coastline, particularly in semi-tropical Florida, where we face hurricane season every year. The other thing I'll say that's intimidating is to be able to have the chair of the Tampa Bay Partnership, Vinnie Dolan, in the audience. So I can't get away with anything. I can't talk about coastal cities. I can't talk about the Tampa Bay Partnership. So I've got my chair here, so he's going to be taking notes. So he'll share with me where I tripped and stumbled. But I did want to talk a little bit about our region, the Tampa Bay region, and what that makes up. So you have a little bit of perspective of where you are here in St. Petersburg in terms of the region. If you flew into the airport in Tampa, or if you drove up the coast, or from across the coast, or from one of our neighboring airports in Florida, we want to talk to you a little bit about this region that St. Petersburg occupies such a great space in. And I will, like every other speaker, I would say, would echo what you just heard. Put your boots on and go out and walk and take a look at the downtown St. Petersburg. It is a gem. It is a jewel. We're sailors, personally, my wife and I, and we live further up Tampa Bay, but our favorite weekend getaway is to come down to St. Petersburg with our sailboat after a beautiful day on Tampa Bay and enjoy everything that Tampa Bay has to offer in the morning, in the evening. No, we don't have earthquakes. I think we have service elevators. But really, it's a gem. So do take some time, skip school, play hooky, and enjoy downtown St. Petersburg. Maybe this is a musical convention or something here. So let me talk a little bit about the Tampa Bay region. And is this, I guess this is my remote. Let's see if it is. It looks like it is. Let me skip over here. The region that we talk about is the Tampa Bay region. It makes up 8 counties in the Tampa Bay community. And right now, if you were to travel to the north of the furthest part of the counties, you are located right here in St. Petersburg in Pinellas County. To the north or to the south, there's about an hour and a half drive, 2 hours drive in either direction. So it's a very big piece of geography. Those of you who've been to Disney, Disney's right here. This is the interstate that takes you right to Disney. So we abut the Central Florida or the Orlando region. 8 counties, 6,500 square miles, 4 million people, 4.2 million people in our region, and a labor force of about 1.9, the 14th largest market in the United States. So you are in a major metropolitan area here in the United States. The other thing I think that is interesting is look at all the coastline. We talked about how Florida is such a coastal state. All this coastline, all these waterways that are here. We estimate 400 miles of coastline and waterways in the Tampa Bay region. So we are filled with water. I came from the East Coast. I spent 10 years in Miami. And if you look at the map of the East Coast of Florida, it's basically straight up and down, and there's the coastline, and then there may be an intercoastal waterway, but there's none of this geography that makes it so special. The waters, the rivers, the bays, the winding in and out that really makes our region so very, very special. So significant coastlines, and additionally, 3 major ports. The Port of Tampa, a port here in St. Petersburg, and another growing port just to the south of us called Port Manatee, halfway between Tampa and Bradenton. 3 major ports that serve shipping lines, cargo, containers, and are growing rapidly as they serve the needs of a rapidly growing state of Florida. Now you might wonder why somebody who's involved in economic development, and let me go back, and just to share with you a little bit about how we do economic development. These are the businesses that make up the Tampa Bay Partnership and support regional economic development and work on a daily basis. In the middle is the map that I just showed you, grayed in, the 8 counties, and the economic development organizations, the cities and counties, cities like the city of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County, that are our partners in economic development. So this is a public-private partnership led by the business community, but engaging every community in the 8 counties of Tampa Bay to address economic development. So how do we think about economic development, and why am I here, and am I sharing with you some of the issues as it relates to coastal communities? Well, we think about economic development as our goal here is building a more prosperous community. That's something that is absolutely critical. How do we advance the prosperity of our region and the communities that we serve? And the way that we do that is to look at growth, issues of growth. Like any other organism, any community that is growing will, if they put the right pieces together, will be prosperous. And if they're not growing, then it's very, very difficult to create a more prosperous community. So we look at growth from a variety of different perspectives: productive growth, inclusive growth, and sustainable growth. Productive growth is the things that economic developers think about all the time. Things like jobs and innovation. How do we create more jobs? How do we become more productive using our innovation capacities to be more productive, be more successful as a community, and generate more jobs? But you can't just have productive growth, and we've learned that through the years. You also have to have inclusive growth, where you make sure that everybody participates, that there's opportunities at every level, and that you're giving the residents of the community, the citizens of the community, the opportunity to participate by being trained, by being educated, by being informed, by being able to take advantage of the jobs that a community might grow. And then most important, sustainable growth is something that's very, very important. Now, sustainability, I hope you all talk about it for a while, to me is one of those words that are being used quite a bit. It's like sustainability, green, what does it mean? For us, sustainability means you don't grow beyond the resources that you have. You don't outstrip the resources you have. And we learned that from an economic lesson here in Florida. When we overbuilt our construction industry, we overbuilt the housing industry, and we're suffering with that from a downturn. We outstripped the resources, in this case, the population that was coming to Tampa Bay, and we're suffering the downturn. So we're asking ourselves, how do we create more sustainability? How do we create more sustainable growth so that it is durable growth, so that it can continue to grow and we don't see the kinds of cycles that we undertake? But sustainability includes a lot of things, and you're talking about those things today. To address the growth issues, though, we have to look at these 6 drivers. And one, again, is from an economic development perspective, is do we have the kind of business climate and competitiveness to allow us to succeed? Do we have the regulations in place to address the needs that we have? And it's interesting to hear the dean talk about at the university, how do you take science and affect public policy to make sure you have the right regulations to advance what you're trying to advance? And that's one of the things we look at. Do we have the right business climate and competitiveness to be successful? We also look at innovation. Where are the ideas coming from? Whether they're coming from USF and the universities, or whether they're coming from our research institutions, or our cultural institutions, or our art institutions, our businesses that are being innovative, our residents, where do we capture that innovation, and how do we take it in innovation to be able to compete in this world? We also look at human capital, the people, training, education. Do we have the resources there that we need? And we also look at 2 other items, I think, that begin to start to relate to some of the conversations you're going to have in the next couple days. Do we have the infrastructure to support growth? And do we have the right type of infrastructure to support the right type of growth? So do we have the roads, the power, the water, the services that we need, the infrastructure we need to continue to grow? And what kind of infrastructure are we putting in place? And then do we have quality places? Do we have the kinds of places that people want to live, work, and play in? You know, one of the things when I talk to people who've moved here, and those of you who live here, nod your heads yes or raise your hand and say, no, I disagree with that. When you ask people, what do you like about being here? They say it's a nice place to live. It's a great place to live. It's a great quality of life. It draws them here. and they want to continue that. So how do we make sure we provide those quality places? Not just quality of life, but quality places like what's right outside of our front door, to be able to continue to make it attractive for people to live, work, and play here. So quality places is very, very important to what we do and how we address economic development. So this model for prosperity, I spent some time on it because I think it talks about the idea of a holistic approach to growing an economy, addressing economic needs, creating jobs, and most important, focusing on how do you create a prosperous community with a balance of issues that you're addressing. So let's just spend a few minutes and talk about how we do that. We have a strategic plan at the Tampa Bay Partnership that has 4 focus areas. One is a regional business plan. I'm going to be leaving you right after this to go to a session at St. Pete College where we have about 200 people, and we're going to be addressing and updating them on the regional business plan. In fact, if you want to follow what's going on today, even if you want to ask questions about what the regional business plan is, get out your phone and tweet to hashtag RBP Tampa Bay, and we'll be following the events of the day. But we're going to be going there and talking about this regional business plan, which is how do we create jobs in 4 major sectors, and I'll touch on those sectors in a minute, and particularly at how it relates to what we're talking about today. But look here, the second major focus area is quality places. How do we make sure we have the right communities in terms of livability, in terms of health, in terms of education? And we have a one-day effort, and I'll touch on that in a minute when it talks about livable communities, that is looking at transportation, land use, the environment, economic development, and now health and education to say how do we create those quality places? How do we address those quality place needs that we can see? That we see we need as a community. And then the 2 other issues are public policy and leadership, and those are really the drivers that help us to get the first 2 done. Do we have the right public policy and advocacy? Do we have the right message in front of a legislative delegation that makes up 25% of the legislature in Tallahassee? And are we getting our fair share of what we need from that legislature to support our communities, our institutions, our infrastructure, our economic development? And do we have leaders who understand what it takes to work in a regional environment? I put the map up and showed you the 8 counties. We didn't draw a circle of those 8 counties and say this is the Tampa Bay region. Each one of those counties and cities elected to become part of, chose to become part of the Tampa Bay region because they realized it's a true region. It's a place that makes up a market, makes up connection points from cities to cities and counties to counties. So what does it take to be a leader and to address these issues at a regional level? And how do we build leadership and understanding and awareness of the issues so that people can stand up and say, I get why we're working as a region, I get how this benefits my community, I get how this benefits my business, and I'm with you, I want to work with you on these issues. So that's our strategic plan. 3-year plan. It's available on our website. If you like, take a look at it. Give us your thoughts and feedback because it's a plan that evolves over time and develops over time as the needs of the community evolve and develop over time. And we want your thoughts and input because you're part of this community. You're part of helping us understand what we at the Tampa Bay Partnership need to do. Let me talk about 2 things right now that we're working on, and tie them back to this conference. One is our regional business plan, and then 2, I'm going to talk about One Bay for a little bit. What we've done in the regional business plan is, and we used SRI International, by the way, not the office down the street, but really the office in Arlington, Virginia, and they did the research for us. By the way, the Tampa Bay Partnership worked with USF, worked with Pinellas County, the city of St. Petersburg, to attract SRI from Menlo Park a few years back. And we attracted SRI to the campus here, to the waterfront here in St. Petersburg. They have a brand new facility that's been built thanks to the city of St. Petersburg. We attracted them here because we saw the need to be able to grow our research presence and provide the kind of support that SRI provides to USF St. Petersburg, and likewise for USF St. Petersburg to benefit from the work that SRI does to commercialize the research that comes from the university and particularly from the marine sciences industry. That's what attracted SRI here, was the marine science program at USF but SRI is growing substantially its presence in this community. But we asked SRI 3 major questions. Where are the jobs of today? Where are the jobs of the future? And what do we as a community need to do to address those jobs? Vinnie Dolan chaired the first 2 years of the research with SRI to understand and put the research together and really be able to have a fact-based look at our economy. First time we had looked at the job base of the 8 counties of the Tampa Bay region. We had never really done a region-wide business plan, and we were very surprised at what we learned. We learned that there's 4 major industries that are growing, that continue to grow, and will have a great potential for growth in the future. That's sort of a dramatic background to my slideshow there, between that and the twinkling up here. Applied medicine and human performance, which is things like healthcare and biotechnology, high-tech electronics and instruments, business, financial, and data services, and marine and environmental activities. The 4 major industry clusters that exist in the Tampa Bay region today and have the potential to grow. And it gets more exciting than that. When we added up all the jobs in those four industries, we found that they made up about 360,000 jobs, or 1 in 4 of all the jobs in the Tampa Bay region. And that was very interesting. So in those 4 industries, if you go to a meeting in Tampa Bay, 1 in 4 people in Tampa Bay work in those 4 major industry clusters. Not only that, they make up 360,000 jobs, but they pay wages 19% above the average wage, 20% above the average wage for all other jobs in the Tampa Bay region. High wage, high skilled kinds of jobs. Well, not only that, but they're going to grow to 500,000 jobs by the end of the decade. So from 360,000 to 500,000 jobs. And to put that in perspective, when we went into the recession, which we're coming out of here slowly but surely in Tampa Bay, we lost 200,000 jobs in the entire Tampa Bay region in about 5 years. Well, we can make back over 150,000 jobs if we work very hard. And not only are they jobs, but they're high-skilled, high-wage jobs if we work very hard to be able to do that. So let's talk a little bit about marine and environmental activities and what do we see in those jobs. Well, it does include tourism, but we didn't count the tourism figures into this, but it does include tourism because it's so attractive. It includes the kind of research that the dean talked about at USF. It includes aquaculture. That work that is being done at USF and at Mote Marine. One of the things we learned is that in a state that's surrounded by water, in a country that's surrounded by 3 oceans in the Gulf of Mexico, we export, and the 4th ocean is the Arctic Ocean up in Alaska, so the Arctic, Atlantic, Pacific, right, and the Gulf of Mexico. We export over $10 billion a year of seafood, import over $10 billion a year of seafood. In a country that is surrounded by water, we import over $10 billion worth of seafood. That, next to oil and gas, is the largest products that we import in the United States. So not only is this an issue about how do we feed the population, but it's an issue about defense and security. So how do we address that? And here we are in Florida with the ability, because of our environment, our weather, our experience with agriculture, our experience with farming for tropical fish. How do we turn that into a productive aquaculture industry? And I'd put that question out to you because I think you could help us understand that. We're working very hard with Mote Marine, USF, to understand how we can turn this into a food-producing industry in Florida and do it in an environmentally sustainable way. And so Mote Marine is leading that effort along with USF and has received some research dollars to show how you can do inland aquaculture 20 miles from the coast and also do it in an environmentally sensitive way where you're recharging the water, recycling the water, and not using the amount of water that you normally need to use. How do we turn that into a production facility? How do we turn that into a way to feed our population? So that's one of the interesting things about marine environmental activities, but it also relates to one of the reasons why SRI came here. You heard about the oil spill and USF and the work that USF is doing today to address the oil spill needs. Well, also, that same technology can be used in defense applications. And right across the water here is MacDill Air Force Base with two commands. The Southern Command, which is the command that's been fighting the war in the Middle East, and the Special Operations Command that deals with all the unique things, like the group that took Osama bin Laden out. Those commands were being operated right out of MacDill. So how do we apply defense applications to these marine and environmental applications to deal with underwater sensing, port security, all the things that we need to deal with? So marine and environmental activities is a very, very important and a growing industry for the Tampa Bay region, and we're excited about asking ourselves, what can we as a community do to grow that and the three other industries we've identified in the regional business plan? So we'll be looking forward in the next couple of days to hear from you about what your suggestions are about how we can grow this industry. Let me shift gears a little bit and talk about regional visioning. Let me finish up with this. Because one of the things we've looked at is what we call One Bay, and we've asked the question, how shall we grow by the year 2050, and if we double the population estimates and number of jobs in the region, how do we provide for that? How do we address our growth needs? And it might be hard to talk about growth now when we've seen growth sort of stabilize, but in fact the Tampa Bay region continues to grow, Florida continues to grow, and our population in the country and the world will continue to grow as well. So how do we, in the west coast of Florida here, address some of those? Well, what we did was we came together five very interesting organizations. The Urban Land Institute, and I see Richard Gearing is here, and Susan Jezik is here today. The Tampa Bay Partnership, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, and TBARTA, the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority. And we all came together, and I'm going to give you the overview of what we did because the group is coming to meet with you in one of the breakout sessions, I believe, tomorrow. But we asked this question, how shall we grow? And we didn't just ask it to ourselves or a group of 200 or 300 people assembled, but we asked thousands of residents throughout the region, how shall we grow? We bought Legos. We bought little Legos, red and yellow Legos. I think we had the corner on the market for Legos in the United States 5 or 6 years ago. We put big maps of the region that I showed out on a table. We broke people into groups of 10. We had scientists, we had developers, we had mayors and elected officials, we had business leaders, we had neighborhood leaders. We all sat down at that table and we said, where are we going to put the Legos? The yellow Legos represented the population of the future. The red Legos represented the employment. We could put them anywhere on the map. We could spread them like peanut butter. We could stack them in our downtowns. We could put them along the coastline. We could put the population here and the employment here. But when we did that, we said, what are the guiding principles? What do we want to do? And what might it look like if we were to use these guiding principles to guide the growth of the region and to help shape that growth? And there were some very interesting conclusions that came out of that. By the time we got done, we talked to 10,000 people using the Lego exercise, using online surveys, using feedback, getting information in many, many different ways. But 10,000 people helped us to say, how should we grow? And I'll give you the outcome, and you can learn about the specifics by going to the breakouts in the next couple days. But what we realized back in 2010 is if we follow the trends of growth, all this purple will be population in our region today. All this green is preserved land, and this is vacant land that's either agriculture or preserved and vacant land. Everybody said the current trend is unsustainable. It costs too much, it takes up too much environmental land. It's not friendly to the environment. It's not easy to get around. It's going to be too hard to drive from work to home if we're all spread out like this in terms of population. And what the feedback we got from the citizens that we talked to through the Lego exercises, through the feedback, et cetera, was to look at different ways of providing for growth along transportation corridors, in downtowns, and along these areas, and see what happens is that you wind up being able to preserve and connect these green spaces. We just had a group that traveled from the foot of Florida to the Georgia border. And their purpose was to say there are wildlife corridors that we can preserve, we can keep in Florida that are very important to the environment and to the quality of life of Florida. Well, here in the Tampa Bay region, we begin to identify how we can connect up some of these lands and how we can provide for that doubling in population along existing corridors where infrastructure is provided. So that was the conclusion of One Bay. And let me share with you, it took us 3 or 4 years to get to that point. It was very difficult in many cases, but it was very exciting to see people come together and say, yeah, we can make a difference. And now we're beginning to ask ourselves, well, how do we take that from vision to public policy? What do we do with that? Richard Deering will tell you up in Pasco County, they've done wonders in terms of how to address that corridor. And I think, Richard, you're talking about that later on. So that's an example of how that gets done. Pasco County has recognized that. Largo has looked at that to improve their downtowns. Other communities are beginning to look at that, implementing some of these principles into their plans, into their guidelines. But we've got to get even better at addressing how do we go from here to there. And you're going to hear some other conversations about transportation. We're facing some very important transportation decisions in this region. We've faced some very challenging transportation decisions in this region. We haven't quite got over the top, but I'm hoping that we're learning so we can get there. So we have to understand, how do you apply this land use map to a transportation map? Unfortunately, we have a group called TBARDA. And I'm sorry I didn't bring the transportation map with me today, but if you overlaid their plan for transit and transportation onto this plan, it would match up with these dots. Not with this, but with this. And so now we have land use and transportation tied together. So we have a vision for where we're going. The question now becomes, what do we do with it? How do we convert that into actionable items that the communities can undertake, that businesses can undertake, that organizations can undertake to say, this is the future we want. So that's a little bit about planning, a little bit about what we do with One Bay. And like any other good organization, you need to have that strategic plan. You have to know what the most important things are so you can focus on what you're going to do on a day-by-day basis. So we're excited about that partnership that we organized with One Bay. We looked at land use, we looked at transportation in this scenario, came up with these conclusions. Now we're addressing things like education and health. How can we be the most healthy community in the world? How can we be the most educated population in the country or the world? Those are the kinds of things we're asking with One Bay. So I will leave you with that, and just to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Good luck in your sessions in the next couple of days. You've got some very exciting and very important issues. I look forward to learning from all of you. My team at the Tampa Bay Partnership will be here to talk more about One Bay and about transportation and some of the other issues that are important to us. Look forward to learning from you. And if you have any questions or if we can provide any information, please let us know. And again, for those of you who are not from St. Petersburg, as you too said, get on your boots and go out and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful environment and see what coastal communities should really be all about. So thank you very much.